Attention Talking Simpsons listeners, would you love to hear us give the same treatment to Futurama?
Who would do a thing like that?
Who could do a thing like that?
Then you'll be delighted to know we're doing just that for Futurama's entire first season.
Hey, when you look this good, you don't have to know anything.
And it'll only be available for people who donate at the $5 level to the Talking Simpsons Patreon.
Oh, God, no!
And along with 13 episodes of Talking Futurama, you'll get all 23 episodes of Talking Critic, the entire first season of Talking Simpsons, monthly community podcasts, interviews with Simpsons writers, and so much more!
Shut up and take my money!
Remember, go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons to get your hands on podcasts from the world of tomorrow!
Cartoons from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello everybody, welcome to What a Cartoon, where sunburn is too much of a good thing. I am your host, the flesh-colored and unappealing Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who's with me today?
Henry Gilbert, and I am great at boggle and musings.
Two great skills. Who else?
I'm Matt J, and I want to see Encino Man, but I don't have any money.
It requires money can buy you good services and Encino Man. And today's episode is the King of the Hill episode, Peggy's Headache.
Peggy Hill.
I love that clip. So yes, we are finally so my podcasting dream has come true. The patrons denied me my dream by forcing me to do Futurama. I'm kidding. I love Futurama, but I love Futurama, but I love King of the Hill. I love The Simpsons. I love The Simpsons more than King of the Hill, and I think King of the Hill has better writing than The Simpsons.
I agree.
Yeah, I would say per capita, it's if you were to put their 13 seasons together, the first 13 seasons Simpsons and all 13 seasons King of the Hill, I would say per capita it has better writing, and better character for sure.
The worst King of the Hill gets is pretty good.
Yeah. Even when Michael Keaton is getting his head drilled in.
I love that episode, Henry. I will say that's a great episode. A bad episode is Tank is actually related to ZZ Top.
Yeah, that's a worse episode.
But let's celebrate the good of King of the Hill. And I want to go over a little bit of the background info of the show, including our relationship with King of the Hill. And as Henry said, it went on for 13 seasons, 255 episodes. It was canceled a few times, as Futurama was.
Yep, yeah, but they got renewed soon enough to never have an interruption in broadcast.
Yes, and I have to thank the TV critic Jamie Weinman, who he sort of got me into looking at King of the Hill on a deeper level because he wrote a lot about it in the I think early 2000s, maybe late 2000s. But he pointed out something that we all kind of forget is that King of the Hill was huge for Fox. It was a huge show for its first 3 or 4 years. It was sort of the new Simpsons that they were trying to get with the Critic and other things like that.
They advertised the crap out of it. It was the favorite. As Mike Reese will allege, and I don't particularly agree with, is that Fox stuck with King of the Hill over all the other animated shows they had because it was one that they produced, that they owned the rights to, and could syndicate later. I'm certain there was a business reason behind that. It's annoying to admit, but you have to, that quality doesn't actually just mean why something keeps going. It also has to do with capitalist market reasons as well.
Fox.
Yeah, especially.
And Mike Reese also said that Hank Hill is just Homer with glasses, which I don't understand.
That's awful. That's a horrible thing to say.
He has never seen King of the Hill.
Yeah.
So this is a very, very Texan show, but I want to say people are like, oh, you won't get it unless you're from Texas, or these are very Texan things. But I feel like broadly it's a satire of middle America. There are millions of Arlens. You don't have to be in Texas to have experienced the Arlen lifestyle. I grew up in a city, but everywhere around me was Arlen, just flat, boring suburbs.
It's a suburban mediocrity.
Yes.
That's what it is. It's a celebration of that and showing that it is banal, but it can be fun too, and their lives are not empty. They're not sad idiots. It's about the King of the Hill is, I think, at its funniest when it both confirms assumptions and undercuts them.
Yes, and it makes you happy for these people that are celebrating what you would see as very uninteresting things, but it's their life and they're happy to live it that way. So
I identified with it a lot, and I'm a coastal elite. I'm from South New Jersey, and I still really identify. I saw all those characters characters in my life all the time, especially the middle school, because I was in middle school when the show was at
That's
its
right.
peak.
You were like approaching Bobby's age when it started, maybe.
Yeah, it
or
was.
around that?
Was it 97?
97.
So
Yeah.
I was probably 8 when it started. So pre Futurama. But I was on it from day one. I loved the show because it was kind of like, to my little kid brain, it was more Simpsons. And then as I get older and I developed and I became more aware of my surroundings, I saw that deepness in it, and I really, really enjoyed it. And the height of it, as you say, like how huge it was like pretty, even though that first season is like, what, 12 or 13 episodes?
It's 13. I think like with Futurama, they aired 9 of them and then pushed the rest of the episodes onto the second season. So the second season had like 25.
There's some of that in
Yeah.
this. I was looking at the numbering, and this is like a season 2 production code, but it's
I think
season
so.
3.
And as a 14-year-old watching the show too, I loved it from beginning. Of course, it was advertised heavily as airing with The Simpsons, so I was going to stick around and see what went on after The Simpsons. And even if I didn't see the words from the creator of Beavis and Butthead, you see one frame of it or hear 1 second of Hank Hill, you're like, oh, this is from the Beavis and Butthead.
Well, yeah, we all knew that it was Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Who
Oh.
instead of now he loves propane instead of, what did Mr. Anderson love? It was another kind of gas.
I mean, America.
Yeah, he loved America. He was a veteran.
Yeah.
That was important too.
Butane. He loved butane.
Butane. That's
Very different.
That's a bastard gas.
And Fox really got behind it, probably because of those reasons we mentioned, but also Mike Judge, it was super game, and he knew how to play the game of making an animated show more than most of the people they hired to make animated shows.
I'm sure he probably made pitches before this. I haven't heard of anything like between Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill that he tried to pitch, but I'm sure there were several things.
And he was on like Fox commercials and stuff. Like Hank Hill met the Silver Surfer and
Yeah.
did a lot of weird. To this day, like Hank Hill's been on Family Guy like 2 or 3 times,
And he's been on The Simpsons.
He's
Did we
been on
mention that?
they've been on
Yeah.
The Simpsons several. We drove 2,000 miles for this.
That was a nice little like, hey, new guy, how's it going?
Yeah.
kind of
It's
moment.
cute.
Yeah,
It's cute.
But we will see later on in this episode the aftermath of them getting behind King of the Hill in a big way, where they tried to do their Who Shot Mr. Burns really early, which was who died in the Megalomart fire.
Oh yes, there's actually 2 of those, Matthew, and they're both great. It was like the Megalomart explosion, like who blew up the building. The second one was like who killed Debbie Grund.
Yeah.
Yes.
with the high anxiety where Hank has marijuana poisoning.
Yes.
The marijuana poisoning. We're all going to be doing number one. We're all going to be doing very bad Hank Hill impressions. I think mine is
Holobuster.
okay, but I think it might be a better Dale.
My current Hank Hill impression is an impression of another impression. Have you seen that video of somebody playing VR chat where they're Hank Hill dressed like Naruto running around? He goes, "I'm going to be the next Hokage."
No, but that sounds awesome.
That's been running through my head nonstop.
This is a game that European men play while their wives work.
So I want to get into more about why I love King of the Hill and why I think it had a great following and lasted so long. So one of the biggest things, unlike The Simpsons, is that King of the Hill actually has continuity, which I think makes it a very comfortable and very friendly show to watch. It's like the house always has the same layout, like everything is figured out from the beginning, and they really pay off a lot of continuity much later in the series. They're not afraid to end a storyline or end a running joke because they ran out of ideas or they want to have a more interesting thing, as we'll see in this episode we're going to talk about today. It is more of the John Redcorn and Nancy Gribble story, and they'll eventually end that in the next season where they stop that completely and John Redcorn is no longer cheating with Nancy.
And they find new things to do with John Redcorn. They'll age up Joseph Gribble as well, or they'll have people move in. They'll have characters change.
They get new jobs,
change.
yeah.
And they stick. Or Bobby and Con Jr. will break up
Yeah.
or start dating. They would play around a lot more with continuity than The Simpsons really was interested in.
They'll have like big celebrity guest stars come on and stay on as recurring characters.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
no other show really. Animated shows had celebrity guests all the time. Simpsons does it every single week.
R.I.P. Tom Petty, who played Lucky, of
Tom
course.
Petty was on like several seasons of this show as a main character. He became practically the protagonist for a while.
At first, I wanted to hate Lucky, and I thought he was the cousin Oliver of the show, but I came to like Lucky. He's fine.
The more I go back as an almost 30-year-old, I enjoy Lucky even more.
His first episode was so great of Con becoming white trash. Like, I
Yes.
just love that. It's,
And I think Lucky's place in the show is that people can look at King of the Hill and be like, oh, it's a show about rednecks. It's like, no, these are middle-class white people. Lucky is the redneck you think the show is about. And
They
rednecks
all look
are scary.
down on him. They don't like Lucky.
But he's still like good-hearted.
Yeah.
And he's not like smart, but he's kind of street smart. He knows how to get when he needs, and he knows how to stay alive.
He's got a very like Zen philosophy about him. He's
Yeah.
very like at ease. Nothing can shake him.
Well, so sorry, we interrupted the history thing though. Like this
sorry.
was Mike Judge, 1995. It started working on it, right?
Yeah, with Greg Daniels of The Simpsons, who read episodes like Bart Sells His Soul, I believe Secrets of a Successful Marriage, Homer and Apu. He left The Simpsons, and he probably would have been a showrunner if not David S. Cohen, if not Mike Scully. You
Just
know,
midway through season 7, they're actually pretty sad on season 7. Like, we lost Greg. He was really great. Like, he was Milhouse. That's who Greg says. Like, he was Milhouse as a kid. He looks the most like Milhouse of any Simpsons.
And
writer.
if you look at King of the Hill and Greg Daniels' other shows that he ran and created, like the American version of The Office and Parks and Rec, he is very good at building very specific places and putting very specific people that you would not see on shows. Like Ron Swanson, he's very Hank Hill in some ways, but he's also a very unique character that you would not see on another show. And there's a lot of that going on in King of the Hill. Like Dale Gribble is like one of the first characters of this type I've ever seen, not in reality. I mean, my uncle was Dale Gribble. He belonged to a gun club. I shot guns with him. He always wore a ball cap and sunglasses because he was bald. He loved conspiracy theories. He thought Bill Clinton killed people. In fact, I think either Mike Judge or Greg Daniels said the one accurate thing that we didn't make Dale was racist, because if Dale was all of these things, he would also have to be racist. And my uncle was racist.
I know that is the one thing of legitimacy, especially with Dale. This episode to me too, not to get ahead of ourselves, but Dale, they have to work overtime to make him likable because all of his traits in real life are 9,999 times out of 10,000 a racist asshole. So they have to be like, well, but this is the one that isn't. This guy's okay.
In real life, he'd be like, hey, Hank, you know about those globalists, right?
Those triple parentheses. You heard about these?
But I'm glad that Dale is my favorite character, and I love Hank. I have a Dale Gribble action figure. Actually, the King of the Hill. I was working at GameStop. Wait, no, Spot. No, Stop.
No,
I was working at GameStop when they came out.
Website or store?
It was both. But they were called in-action figures. But it comes with a beer, and he's holding a cigarette, and I love Dale Gribble so much.
Well, my favorite, who doesn't get much in this episode, is Bill.
He's got some good lines, but it's not about him.
No, I love Bill in that I have struggles with depression as well, so I like that in Bill. But I like that he is the saddest. He is stupid, but not the dumbest. He's smart enough to know he's in a horrible place, and that's why he's sad.
Yes.
It's like, Lenore.
He's more of a realistic Homer, where Homer should be upset about the state of his life, but isn't.
I know. Just all his things like his barely hidden love for Peggy. He's like, the time when he thought Hank said that Peggy had a twin, he's like, two Peggy?
Yes.
You mean a Peggy that's not married to Hank? It's
And again, that running joke would pay off in an episode where Peggy basically is running a pyramid scheme and forcing Bill to help her. And they go off together on a trip, and it's very awkward.
Yeah.
But it all pays off. Like these running jokes, including one of the first jokes in the series, that when Joseph is revealed, he's revealed as a small brown child, not white like Dale, not white like Nancy. And that is a gut punch visual joke that they have to stick with as a story element.
for 255 episodes.
Yes.
It's just for a one-off joke. Yeah. Well, who's your favorite, Matthew?
My favorite character in the whole show? Oh my god, it's so hard to pick. I go back and forth. One thing that I do really enjoy is I love when, we're talking about status quo. I love when characters can evolve. Like Dick Grayson's my favorite comic book character, because we've seen him go from an 8-year-old to he's led the Justice League and the Outsiders. And
he has the best butt in comics.
And he has. I love that canonically he has a great butt. That's the best.
Every artist has to draw.
You
it.
have to learn how to do it, and it's always a square. They always know it's square.
But anyway.
I love that, and I don't consider myself a big fan of Joseph, but the change he makes, where he changes from Brittany Murphy to Breckin Meyer to doing that voice, it just kills me every time. It's so funny.
He basically becomes puberty incarnate,
Yeah.
like a dumb, like sex crazed teenager.
Dumb and frustrated. He's like, why can't I do this?
But in terms of character, I mean, and that's a very the kids I identify with, because I was literally going through puberty as that character did, and that was that was an interesting thing for me to
What a
experience.
perspective.
Yeah, and the cartoons, I didn't get to see cartoons do that.
Yeah.
But I to this day, as a little kid growing up with my normie ass family, who was like, I wished I was Jewish and Canadian because I was a little comedy nerd. Like, I identified with Bobby so hard because I wanted to be a performer. And then I eventually, like, in my early 20s, started taking improv classes and that kind of stuff. And I, to this day, every time I pick up a new, like, artistic hobby, I think of Bobby, trying to spread his wings and be artistic, and his dad just trying to tamp him down to being normal.
Those are the best episodes.
Especially, what are you talking about?
Or like going to the deli and getting gouts because he eats too much weird fish.
That Bobby is the original fail son. Like, he was he is the guy that is cursed upon the high school football star who's like dreams of, when I have this son, he's gonna, obviously as a pudgy fail son myself, I could identify with it sometimes too much, but that boy ain't right. That defines him. That Hank thought he was going to have a future football star, and he's a weird kid listening to toilet sound.
Yes. And it was a miracle that he was born because of Hank's narrow urethra, and he just is like, this is the one that we got. But he loves him because he's his dad and he's a great son.
He's my boy.
Yeah.
But I mean, sorry, I threw us all off track with that. Hank Hill out of nowhere.
Don't stop.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great dynamic between them, and you never get a sense that Hank hates Bobby. He's just like trying to understand him, which is why it's a very, very sweet show. So I wanted to talk more about the development of the show. Sure. So I think the comic sensibilities of Greg Daniels and Mike Judge are very different, but they like very specific characters. And I think like the soft libertarianism of Mike Judge pairs well with the sort of more leftist influences of Greg Daniels to sort of make it a show for kind of everybody, because you can watch the show and be like, oh, I'm on board with Hank. This stuff is weird. I'd be like Hank. Or you could be like watching it as an overeducated jackass like me and be like, yes, Hank is very naive, and the humor is all from him being very naive about things. It's like, it makes it a show that doesn't really look down on the characters, I think.
Yeah, not really. I think that too is when there's stories of when Mike Judge like came back to the show was because he had left the show under other showrunners, and he would come back because he felt they were making Hank the joke too much.
Yes. Although I say I love those seasons. That's 5 and 6, I believe.
Yeah,
and
I had
there's
a lot of fun with those.
So many great episodes, including Alabaster, the one where Hank becomes a pimp unwittingly. I mean, I think that's the one everyone remembers.
I am the Mac Daddy of Arlen County.
But I'm pimping that propane. And that Mike Judge did the amazing thing that he never had to do, and I wouldn't think anyone in Hollywood would do this, is that he was working on the show, and they coupled him with Greg Daniels, and then he was like, Greg, you've given so much to making the show work. You're the co-creator now. Like, Mike Judge had the sole creator credit, which means millions of dollars. To then say someone is your co-creator, you are giving them millions of dollars that you could just keep. There's a lot of credits in animation and in just regular American TV of created by blank, developed by blank. And those things really just mean someone's getting paid less in residuals than the other.
More money to them, less money for them.
Every time you see an image, I remember like learning, oh wait, Matt Groening didn't draw every image of The Simpsons. His name's just on it.
Troy McClure covers that in the clip show, actually. So I have a clip of the pitch pilot sort of thing they made for Fox, and Hank is talking directly to the president of Fox TV at the time, John Matoyan, I think his name is, and we talked about him a lot on Talking Critic.
What an asshole.
He is the asshole who canceled the Critic and like called Al Jean and Mike Reese into his office. Is like, tell me why this show is funny. You will sit here and watch this show with me, and I want you to tell me why you think it's funny.
And his job for 2 years at Fox was to only make NBC style must-see TV style shows, which failed. Like Ned and Stacey has good actors on it, but who ever thinks of that show?
They're all making like what friends likes,
all friends alike,
coupling ripoffs.
So here is the pitch pilot, whatever you want to call it. It's all on YouTube, but here is a small portion of it.
Well, Mr. Matoyan, I'd say y'all got the makings of a damn good cartoon here. I mean, you got my wife Peggy, and she's real smart. She teaches Spanish.
I sure do. Yo hablo Espanol.
Isn't that something? And I'm real proud of my boy Bobby because he, because he's my boy.
A bee stung my head.
Put some ice on it, son. And Luann's living with us now since the tornado.
Hello, Hollywood. Love your movies.
She'll probably be real good for ratings, the way she dresses.
There you have it. He introduces everybody, but
aggressive.
this seems like maybe just part of the pitch pilot because it feels like there was something before that. Because he's like, well, there you have it. You know,
Yeah.
And that's obviously not Kathy and Jimmy and all those actors. That's what's her name from The Simpsons?
Oh boy!
Well, it sounded
First I
like
was thinking-
Pamela. No, Tress. Was it Tress?
At first I thought Tress McNeil, but it might be Pamela Hayden. I'm gonna have to look this up.
Yeah, I don't know
Sorry.
if that was Kathy and Jimmy, but obviously it was
definitely
Mike
not.
Judge. And there's one commentary that's not done with characters on all the DVDs, and it's very. I wish
it
they
drives me crazy. I
Yeah.
was like, have some fucking care for this. Tell me about it.
I
Like,
could be the King of the Hill historian like I am the Simpsons historian because those Simpsons commentaries are basically where we get all of our knowledge about everything that ever happened.
You can read more on it. There's more information out there in interviews, including interviews we've done. But yeah, the King of the Hill is more opaque in that way.
Yeah.
Like I mean, Bob and I got some insight into it too, going to the King of the Hill live 20th anniversary show that we went to last year.
Last January, they did the live reading of Husky Bobby, and it was amazing.
It was so
Yeah.
That is a great episode.
Every living regular cast member was there to read their parts, and Pamela Adlon was there to read the Brittany Murphy roles, and she did
that's
an
nice.
amazing job.
Yeah.
And then someone asked her, "What's it like to have a dead person that used to work
Yeah,
with you?"
everybody was just like, these Q&As don't have to ask make them think about their dead friend who they can't not be thinking about right now. Maybe have fun questions.
But the one thing I wanted to bring up from the little that we know about the production of the show based on commentaries is that Mike Judge did not want to be Hank Hill. He did not want to voice the role of Hank Hill because it's like, this is a voice I already do. This is a voice people know. It's a major character on Beavis and Butthead. I want a different person, but they couldn't find anybody. And I got to say, even though it was weird being a Beavis and Butthead fan to hear Mr. Anderson as a new character, but it's just like this. There is no cartoon voice like Hank Hill's. It is like one of the greatest cartoon voices ever because Mike Judge is not a professional voice actor. You get sounds out of that guy that no polished voice actor will be able to do. Like Beavis and Butthead and Hank Hill are all like, no one else is doing those voices.
And then he would eventually make a show that just starred his hippie teacher as well,
Yeah.
The Good Family.
I never gave it a chance.
I've yet to watch it.
It sounded so one note. I expect it to be good.
It was supposed to be the hippie version of King of the Hill.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be the inverse, the other side of the coin, if you
I've
will.
heard it's better than it got credit for, but I have yet to dig into it. But he also, do you remember when he went on Space Ghost and he illustrated the difference
was
between
so
those two
good.
voices?
Oh, yes.
And he's like, "No, this is Hank Hill. That boy ain't right. Now this is Mr. Anderson. I tell you what. And this is Mr. Anderson. I tell you what."
I think over
Totally
time, Hank Hill would. I mean, everyone would, have more energy. As happens with every animated show, people pick up the pace. But I think Hank Hill would eventually become some degree removed from Mr. Anderson over time. Like,
He'd grown to his own, but man, seeing Mike Judge in person at that thing, like,
Yeah.
oh,
he sinks his face into his chin to talk like Hank Hill. It's
Yes.
great.
He is watching him do that stuff is a great lesson in voice acting where you
Yeah.
see, if you watch, we have talked about it on some other show, that movie, the documentary, I Know That Voice. Some of the people do show off like, okay, I have to touch my throat like this to do that character, and I have to do it a certain way or I might break my voice. like this.
That's amazing.
Or, the way Tom Kenny does SpongeBob's laugh is he slaps his
Oh
throat
god,
over and
yeah.
over again.
That's gonna injure him one day. But yeah, Mike Judge, he transforms into Beavis and Butthead when he voices them. If you've ever
pulls
seen
his lip
those,
up
yeah,
real high.
it's so great.
beautiful. But and the rest of the cast is some of my favorite ever. Like,
Again, not a lot of voice actors in the cast, like Kathy Najimy and Brittany Murphy before she briefly became a big star, and then came back to the show when that wasn't really
Before she was
working.
the ramen girl.
Yes.
They moved her across the streets.
Oh, man,
Yeah.
that was. Or also, Kathy Najimy was like fresh off Hocus Pocus, and
Yeah.
she was starring in stuff. She was not. She was still an actress,
Right, but
in things.
Not a voice actress.
But
though.
Stephen
Pamela
Root
Adams-
also.
Oh, Stephen Root is my favorite. When I watched Get Out again recently, I was like, "Yeah, Stephen Root, you're so awesome!" Like he is the greatest in everything. Stephen Root, he can be serious. He can put on a silly voice like meh, meh, meh. Or like him as the judge in Idiocracy is the funniest 2 seconds of that movie. And same with. Though I also loved him as Jimmy James on News Radio. He fucking rules at that.
He's so good in that role. So,
Yeah.
King of the Hill differs from The Simpsons in that it focuses on smaller, more observational stories, which was what Greg Daniels wanted to do. And his other goal was to have like each character have an emotional epiphany or come to a realization that may change them at the end of each episode. And that really happens here. But I do want to say what I like about the show compared to The Simpsons, and I love The Simpsons, is that in The Simpsons, a lot of humor comes out of characters acting inconsistently, like Homer suddenly knowing about a Supreme Court judge, or Moe reading, to sick children in a hospital. All of the humor in King of the Hill comes from characters acting consistently. Like, it's still a laugh line, like when you realize, of course, Hank has the warranty for his sander in his wallet. But it's like, yes, of course Hank would do that. That's why it's funny. It's not characters acting like against type where the humor comes from, which I like.
Yeah, and Dana Gould, I think in our interview or in some other thing about The Simpsons, he summed up Simpsons comedy style so well in saying that The Simpsons joke begins where the regular joke ends. There's what you would assume the joke would be, and then they go against even that expectation. That is the punchline. But on King of the Hill, I think it goes in the opposite direction of like it solidifies your expectation.
And I mean, those are harder jokes to write, which is why I think they have to try a lot harder on this show. They can't make like Hank totally does something wacky against type now. It's like, no, Hank is very rigid. We need to find things that he would do and top ourselves, like to add to his rigidity.
Yeah, one of my favorite examples of that would be when Hank was being told to pay a late fee on pornography he did not rent. And he was so insulted that would even happen. And instead, he was so rigid, like, I will not pay a late fee that isn't mine, that he then watches hundreds of pornos to then find his legal reasoning for it couldn't have been a movie he rented.
That's a great, and Bill helps him as a master of porno knowledge.
He was the deep throat for him, no pun intended on that. I love that end where Bill is the guy secretly taking back his porno tape.
Let the record show, Mr. Hill, you do know your pornography.
And with that consistency thing, have you ever looked at the design notes for the characters? And those are incredible because they're covered in notes about like Peggy cannot stand this way because that's not right. She stands this way. And they even explain like Peggy is conventionally attractive. We're fighting that all the time. Like she needs to have this posture. Her hair cannot look differently than this.
And you cannot give her these curves. This is not how, I mean, Wes Archer should get a ton of credit on this here too. That Wes Archer,
Texan.
Yeah, a Texan too. Yeah. Who,
with a name Wes Archer. What else could he be?
Wes Archer, in case you don't know, he was one of the original animators on the Simpsons shorts on Tracy fucking Ullman. He had worked on The Simpsons until season 7, just like Greg Daniels as well. I believe his last directed episode was Two Bad Neighbors. Or maybe one right after that. But so he was one of the best artists on this, directors on The Simpsons, and then they pilfered him for King of the Hill to be the series director of the show. And so all those notes are from him of like, Hank's eyes would not go this way. His teeth would not go this way. I was just reading through the Steven Universe design docs too. Like there's tons of every cartoon I think has those rules you don't know about because you're not reading the series Bible. But when you see them, you're like, that's why this show, those kinds of rules were invisible but made the show better.
There's even like acting notes, like characters do not high five each other unless it's in the script. Like don't make them too like gesticulaty and wacky and stuff like that. They're very rigid, stiff white people.
And another thing about that is Brian and Mike, the creators of Avatar: The Last Airbender, they worked on the show and they were I think directors on the show. And they it might have just been one of them, might have just been Brian.
I did not know that.
But at least one of them worked on the show, and they went on to create the most fantastical, crazy show with kung fu elements and stuff. And it was almost cathartic for him to be like, I've been working on King of the Hill for years, because he would have fights with Mike Judge and Wes Archer and these guys because they'd be like, oh, you can't fit a camera there, and he's like, it's a cartoon, and they're like, yeah, but a camera wouldn't fit there, so it doesn't make any sense.
It's not as fun too. So there's no so Futurama has Morbotron and Simpsons has Frankiac. There is no King of the Hill search engine, but it's a less fun show if you're looking for poses and things like that because they do act like real people. It's a very like well-made show.
Yeah,
but the acting is very human-like.
If a man is in his 60s and overweight, that he's not going to move all that much. He's just going to be like, I'm tired.
And that's why I get a little snippy when people are like, why was the show even animated? And it's like, there are thousands of reasons why the show should and could only be animated. One of them is it's shot like a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah,
like, it's shot beautifully, but they're shooting mundane things. That's the trick.
And I think these characters would be less believable or lovable if they were just real people
Yeah,
walking
for
around.
sure. And you wouldn't be able to have Dave Herman play 6,000 characters.
Yeah, that's
who
true.
he is the secret hero of the show. He plays every character that comes in that's not a celebrity.
He is
pretty
great,
much.
and some recurring roles too, like Jimmy Pritchard, with like kind of brain damaged guy.
No, there's also Toby Huss is another great guy on it, though, as would be pointed out at our 20th anniversary thing of just like him doing con now makes you feel uncomfortable. It makes you like,
Yes.
boy.
I will say that to the show's credit, that they got an actual Native American to voice John Redcorn
Twice.
Yes, one of them died early on, and
That guy's the most famous Native American actor.
I
The
saw
guy who's-
him in True Grit.
He's in like most things that need an older male Native
an
American
indigenous
guy.
person.
And he's great. He's great in this. And
And he's hilarious in everything he's in. He's a very funny guy.
so if you needed an Asian voice actress, you would get Lauren Tom in the late 90s, and she is doing Min Supanusin film. But I will say, yes, it makes it a bit of a tougher watch these days to have Toby Huss doing a quote-unquote crazy voice for Khan. But I will say that in terms of their minority characters, King of the Hill is like, what is the minority experience? It's not like, let's other these people because they're weird and out there and the white people are normal. It's like, what is this minority experience? Like, John Redcorn's life sucks. Khan has to try way harder than everyone else because he is a minority. It's like, they are looking at these things from a very grounded perspective.
When they go to Mexico and have to deal with people, or the the death-hensive driving episode with Chris Rock in it was so good. I love that when Bobby Bobby innocently falls into white nationalism. He's like, why did you jokes
comedy
about being white? Like, did you? And then he just on stage is talking about just saying racist talking points. It's hilarious. That was so predictive of kids falling into white nationalism on the internet.
And they saw it coming.
Budasak goes to work with Hank at Strickland, and he's later on voiced by Phil Lamar for the rest of the series.
That's right.
He became a recurring character.
Chris Rock's a busy guy.
Yeah, he's got stuff to do. He's got to make all the movies with Adam Sandler.
I was on the outskirts of a little southern town, trying to reach my destination before the sun went down. The old CB was blaring away on Channel 19 when there came a little boy's voice on the radio line. And he said, "Breaker 19, is anyone there? Come on back, truckers, and talk to Teddy Bear." Well, I keyed the mic and said, "You got it, Teddy Bear." And a little boy's voice came back on the air.
Hello, everybody. This is Bob Mackey, one of the hosts of What a Cartoon, thanking you once again for downloading this podcast. I love King of the Hill, in case you couldn't tell from the episode, and I was so excited to finally talk about one of my favorite animated series, and I think there's a pretty good chance we'll be coming back to it in the future, perhaps in a limited mini-series similar to Talking Critic. And in case you didn't know, this podcast and everything we do on the Talking Simpsons network is brought to you by all of the amazing patrons who give us money to make stuff. And if you want to be one of these amazing people, there are some amazing incentives for you to give, and I'll tell you about them right now. So if you want to head over to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons for $5 a month, you can get more podcasts than you can possibly listen to, but probably still can't. So to start things off, if you subscribe at that $5 level, you'll get every episode of Talking Simpsons and What a Cartoon a week ahead of time and ad-free. You'll also get dozens of exclusive podcasts you can't get anywhere else outside of the Patreon, such as 23 episodes of Talking Critic, our chronological exploration of the Critic we did in 2017. We also just kicked off Talking Futurama. We'll be doing the entire first season of Talking Futurama before moving on to our next miniseries, so that's all happening right now. We also have tons of interviews with people like Mike Scully and Bill Oakley and Mimi Pond, and our newest one is with Dan Graney, a writer who joined The Simpsons in Season 7. He's written such episodes as King Size Homer and Summer of 4'2", and he invented the word embiggen, and we had a great, hilarious conversation with him that you can listen to on the Patreon. Frankly, there's almost too much to go over, but I'll list a few more things. We also have the end of season wrap-ups for Talking Simpsons. At the end of every season, we do a wrap-up featuring, news from that year, things that were happening within the show, our favorite characters, our favorite clips, and so on. And from season 5 onwards, we've also done a special deleted scene showcase, both pulling clips from and talking about the roughly 20 to 25 minutes of deleted scenes that you've never seen. That is a lot to keep track of, but if you go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons and sign up at the $5 level, you'll be given an RSS feed that you can plug into any podcast player or app or podcatcher, and you can download our podcast via Patreon just the way you download every other one of your podcasts. And if you're new to the Patreon, you will be busy for a long time, sir or madam. Thank you so much for listening to What a Cartoon. This has been an amazing week for Talking Simpsons and our entire network of shows. We've received an amazing outpouring of support from everybody, and we really appreciate it. And again, if you want to get in on those exclusive podcasts on Patreon and get your podcasts a week ahead of time and ad-free, go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. I'll let you get back to King of the Hill, but remember, next week is the first 2 episodes of Steven Universe will be featured on What a Cartoon, so please look forward to that and enjoy the rest of the show.
Beer from a can always tastes 2 degrees cooler than beer from a bottle, even if they're the same temperature. I don't know why, I'm not a physicist, but I am a beer drinker. Never drink anything with an umbrella, a fruit wedge, or a plastic monkey in it.
Remember, butter first, milk second, then add the cheese powder.
Inhale deeply and often. You're paying for the nicotine, you might as well get the most out of it.
So this episode, Peggy's Headache, the reason I chose it is there are wackier episodes. I love Dog Dale Afternoon, I believe. It's when people think Dale is a clock tower sniper. Yeah. Because Hank steals his tractor. It's a big conspiracy theory. It's great. I love this one because it is a great character study. It shows how great the character writing is. And this episode is where we didn't really talk that much about her yet. It's where Peggy Hill comes into her own as the fully formed Peggy. Yeah. I love Peggy Hill as a character because, like Hank, she is naive, but she assumes she knows everything. Mm-hmm. And that is a very specific, Midwestern middle-aged woman kind of thing to have.
In the mid-90s, it was so hack and sexist to just do my dumb wife jokes. Like, my dumb wife doesn't know nothing. Like,
she says, I can't go to the game with my boys.
Yeah, this woman's a bad driver and stupid. Like, you couldn't do jokes like Gracie Allen jokes you could have done in the 40s. You can't really do those now. And this, with Peggy, they have to walk a fine line of the joke is that Peggy is not smart, but how do you do that without being like this dumb broad joke? You can't do those jokes. Yeah. It would be wrong, and they don't.
I think it's less that she's not smart, but like Hank, you have sympathy for them because they have such a limited perspective, and that informs what they do. But with Hank, he at least tries to come to some understanding with that perspective. Peggy's just like, no, I understand everything because I'm smart.
Yes, and that stops her from being almost the stupidest person in the alley.
Yes.
She isn't the stupidest. It's definitely Dale.
She's a Steve Martin character. She's a pompous idiot.
She's too stupid to know she's an idiot.
Yeah, and
she's very full of herself.
People will believe her and give her jobs writing musings and columns because, she sounds like she knows what she's talking about.
It's a lot of confidence, yes.
Yeah. And unlike Marge Simpson and other TV moms, especially animated ones, she is never nagging Hank or yelling at Hank for drinking or yelling at Hank for working on things or she's on board with all the things Hank is doing for the most part.
Yeah, and just in general about this episode, after we've been doing so many Simpsons, to watch this, I was like, wow, this is so much more laid back. I feel kind of relaxed watching this instead of when we did Sideshow Bob's Last Gleaming, I was like, okay, I've heard 2 seconds of dialogue. Pause. Better look that up. Better look that up. And I feel like in King of the Hill, in the Peggy's Headache, I can just soak it in.
But at the same time, there's a lot of very subtle things in dialogue that really they pay off if you watch it more than once because they build in so much into just exposition and everything like that. So this episode opens with a very good scene. I don't have a clip of it because it's mostly visual, but within 1 minute, you get a sense of all the characters. So Dale leaves his house. He locks 3 locks.
Because he's very suspicious.
He's very suspicious and paranoid. Peggy says hi to him, so okay, they're on good terms. Dale leaves. John Redcorn pulls up. and Peggy says hi to him.
In his Jeep.
In his Jeep. And he unlocks the 3 locks and goes in. So immediately it's like we know what's going on with all these characters. Like in a minute.
No personal massager should have the locks to your door.
Yes.
Like they shouldn't have that.
Or play Meatloaf that loud.
Yes, yeah. And that he, too, John Redcorn is amazing from the beginning, that I love him in every scene, and that he has to make up a lie like, oh, Peggy saw me enter. But he's also been doing this for so long, he's just lazy. He's like, ginkgo biloba.
I think he thinks she knows. Like because for a running joke from the beginning of the series is Peggy's the only one who doesn't know. So
Yes.
there's another status quo change.
It really is. It really is. And one more thing in this exchange that really defines Peggy is John Redcorn, like you said, Henry, is forced to have small talk with her. It's just like, I'm trying out a new healing herb, ginkgo biloba. Peggy's response is, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Like, she doesn't want to have a conversation. She just wants to prove like, oh, I'm smart. I know what that is. Like, it's perfectly Peggy. And we see more of that in the reading of Doyle Harkavey's great musings.
Well, you must be reading Doyle Harkavey. What's he got for us this morning?
When it comes to starting the day, nothing wakes me up faster than coffee.
Boy, he's got that right.
They say children are a blessing, but mine are holy terrors. Oh, Doyle Harkavey knows children. Of course, his daughter jumped out a window.
Luann quietly goes to the sink. But yeah, again, the Hills are simple people. They are amused by these very mediocre things and thoughts and ideas.
Doyle Harkavey, his column is basically Larry King.
Yeah.
Larry King, but a local, low stakes Larry King who just is like, I'm just a guy who they put things in the paper for. That's all.
The
he
Norm
does.
Macdonald Larry King.
Yes, yeah. It's
Ellen
just,
is straight.
and it's just beautiful. His musings are nothing. They're such banality. They are meaningless, and but everyone laughs at him. Like, that's
Except
a true
Bobby.
statement. Yes.
Except Bobby. We'll find out later why.
Yeah. But also that feels like a very small town suburban way of hiding pain, which is also the theme throughout this episode of like, no, it's about getting used to denial. Like, that's what this is about. And that's the Doyle Harkavey thing, too, of him. He's making a joke about my children when it's common knowledge his daughter jumped out of a window. It's like, there's a lot of pain nobody is addressing here.
That also feels like a very Midwestern thing to do, especially when I talk to my family. You'll be bringing up somebody like, oh, his son died, or like, oh, do you hear what happened to his aunts? Like,
his cousin just went to jail or whatever. Yeah,
it's a way of feeling better about yourself. Like, I'm not dead.
The only time my grandparents get out of the house is for funerals, which is like once or twice a month. But I forget, is he the guy with the eye patch?
Later, yes, when Peggy's at the newspaper, because in this episode they point out that his picture has been the same for like decades. But when Peggy works with him, he's got an eye patch.
Yeah, that's true.
He's a very he wears like a bow tie, and he's like a very upright man.
God, and just hearing Brittany Murphy laughing there, I was like, I miss her.
I miss her too.
I really miss her. I watched Clueless again recently, as I do every couple years because it's wonderful and you should. And I was just like, man, she's such a talent.
She's so underrated.
My issue with that movie, like all movies with a similar premise, you know who's ugly? Brittany Murphy. We need to make her pretty.
She's got brown hair.
Ew.
She is slightly above Hollywood standards of thin.
Yeah, she's not Stacey Dash.
Well, it turns out that Doyle Harkavey is retiring to write product descriptions for Bradley Heat and Air Conditioning.
I fucking love that he's quitting. He's quitting being in the newspaper for the worst copywriting job ever. That's how bad this musings thing pays.
And the commentary is, I don't know how they'll ever replace him. But clearly, he's easily replaceable.
Anyone can make musings, though. It almost felt like when Hank is demanding she make a musing to him. I've heard this of Jenna Jameson told the story of how she gets all these. I know this is going in a weird place. Jenna Jameson would tell these stories of like dudes would come up to her and be like, "Oh man, I'd love to be in a porno with you," and then she'd say, "Okay, get hard right now." Right now, we're waiting for you. Get hard, do it, and like that's how I felt with Hank's reply there. I'm like, oh, you can do a musing right now, muse. I want to hear a musing.
It's like Red Sparrow.
I think in a way Hank is sort of calling Peggy out on her bullshit. Like, let's hear one. Come on, like he's
a dream crusher.
Yeah,
Hank is definitely that.
Yeah, but it's like it's not passive aggressive. Like I think he really is good. He wants her to be good at it.
I do think he would feel threatened with Peggy having a job in some small way.
You think so?
Yeah, but I mean, eventually it becomes her job, so I guess
she works
he's
at the
okay with it.
newspaper.
Yeah. So Peggy is stumped on coming up with musings. She immediately makes this her goal. So we see her little scratch pad for a bit. Here are her musings so far that are unprintable. Lots of cookies will make you fat. Thank goodness for plexiglass. Sunburn, too much of a good thing. Nothing is dirt cheap because dirt is free. Mo Sislak would disagree. And give a donkey the chance and it will bite you in the ass. And those are all of her musings.
Pretty good.
And also on her topics thing, she crosses out young people.
Yeah.
I also do love Bobby's supportiveness of when she has a bad musing. One, he's like, that's the best so far.
Yeah, not doing about cookies.
But the line between a good musing and a bad musing is so thin it doesn't even exist.
Yeah, it's all just the most like generic platitudes ever.
But I like how they're being supportive. But I also, as a writer, as someone who has written professionally, not to brag, when her overreaction to Hank coming in, she's like, I cannot do this when you come in every 2 hours. It's like, I've been that way too, of like, I can't write anything and I'm going to lash out at somebody who is making me notice that.
I identify with that, especially like I wasn't a writer when this episode aired, but now that I am and I live with people, I'm like, when I'm writing, you can't be in the same room with me.
Yes.
Like, don't talk to me. I will snap at you. It's a very, very delicate procedure and I need to get through it on my own.
And yet I've got YouTube playlists playing.
Yes.
Of Game Grumps screaming at me.
It's also necessary too. So Peggy goes over to Nancy's because she needs healing.
Oh, there you are. Hello, John Redcorn.
Oh, yes, we were just back here.
I just had to get out of that house. I am trying to do some creative work, and Hank seems to think that he's helping by making me more and more stressed out. It has given me a whopping headache.
Yes, headaches can often be caused by stress.
Of course, John Redcorn. You're a licensed New Age healer. Why don't I try a healing session with you?
Well, I guess that would be all right. It is my job.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay, I'll call you for an appointment.
That was awkward. What kind of game is she playing?
Well, Suge, I don't think she knows about us. Peggy's got such a trusting nature. She always believes the best in people. You know, all of a sudden I feel dirty. I'm gonna take a shower.
I'll join you.
No one learns anything. So in case you're new to King of the Hill, Nancy and John Redcorn have been cheating with each other on Dale. Is that how that works? Is that how that sentence works?
She got with Dale and almost immediately starts cheating on him with her healer.
Over a decade.
And had his
12
son,
years.
Joseph.
And had his son, yeah. And that her headaches are so bad, it's been going on for 12 whole years. And Dale has no idea, no clue. When Dale in the first episode is a piece of shit. Like he is like,
he really is.
That's Nancy over there and her New Age healer or whatever, and he's watching TV. Like he's an asshole. In the
Dale
first
becomes much more comical
Yeah.
and much easier to like, even though he is a cretin.
And I do love the design on Nancy that she is what a hot Texan mom would be in the suburbs.
She's a weather lady.
Yeah,
giant hair,
tight
jeans,
bigger boobs, that she's in good shape, but she's not like movie star attractive, but she's just the most attractive woman in the suburb.
Mm-hmm. So Peggy goes to John Redcorn's, and there was one joke in here where I was like, what's the joke here? Because like Peggy gets out of her car, locks it with the car alarm. I'm like, why would they animate that and write that in? It's a great little payoff because later Peggy drops her keys from being so relaxed and they cut outside the trailer and then back inside for like a time cut. It's a very very clever way to make a time cut,
really,
setting it up like that.
I like that a lot. I also do like John Redcorn never goes below her neck. Like he really is. And just how he has to say like, oh, it is actually my job. No, I really do this. I know I fuck lots of women, but I also am a massage therapist.
And one of the very subtle things baked into all the John Redcorn stuff throughout the series is like John Redcorn is doing all this New Age stuff to trick white people into giving him money because they're they see him as like, oh, you're a mystical Indian. You can help me with my problems. He's like, I will buy into this because they will let me steal from you because you've stolen so much from my people. I will steal from you now.
John Redcorn. So this kind of gets a sequel in season 4 when they officially break up, Nancy and John Redcorn, and she gets back with Dale.
And he immediately becomes pathetic.
Yeah, he becomes kind of pathetic, angry all the time. The Thanksgiving episode where he tries to teach his native stuff to Joseph. Joseph refuses to learn it. Bobby learns it, but learns about the cannibalism.
Yes.
And then John Redcorn has to be like, I'm not a cannibal. And then he says, you know who were cannibals? And he starts naming all these like famous ones, including Jeffrey Dahmer. He's like, and he keeps saying, that guy was white, also white. And then Dale goes like, you sure know a lot about cannibals.
One of my favorite lines of the entire show is I think it's Dale says like, do your people even celebrate Thanksgiving? And he says, we did once.
That's great. Yeah. So there's a great line for Peggy. I didn't capture it, but she was like, I wasn't expecting carpet. I don't know what I was expecting. But carpet. It's like, did you think he lived in a teepee or something?
I'm pretty sure they all did. But that's something too. If you're going to write white suburban people, you need to get around their ignorance, I guess, in lack of a better word. Like Peggy ignorantly made a racist assumption of John Redcorn. I would not call her racist, but she's just like, well, yeah, this is an Indian, so I think he lives in a teepee.
It's her very limited perspective from not knowing anything about John Redcorn.
That's another one of those working overtime to make everyone likable. They have to do with pretty much every character because of our preconceptions of the South and Middle America and that kind of thing.
And by the way, I was born in Arkansas, and grew up in Florida, is northern Florida, which is the South.
We're all white trash. No one's pretending to not be white trash here. Yeah,
I'm not throwing stones from the outside. Sorry, I interrupted you.
It's okay. No, I am total white trash. I will always own up to it. My parents were never married. I'll say that. One of my favorite ones is we don't know who Hank voted for in 2000.
Oh, right.
They don't let you see.
That was a good choice.
He meets George Bush and he doesn't like his handshake, and that shatters his beliefs in politics.
That's such a great episode too, man.
Luann becomes a communist. I love that.
It's great. So eventually, Hank does find out about Peggy.
Peggy's going to have a hard time replacing Doyle Harcavy. That guy's amazing. I mean, you look at his picture in the paper, he never gets a day older.
Well, she has to mail in a sample column this week, but she'll muse circles around him if she can just get past her headaches.
Well, those headaches are good as gone. Peggy went to John Redcorn for a healing.
What?
Don't worry. Old John R. will fix her up just like he does for Nancy 3 times a week.
No, Hank, I'm sure Peggy's headache is nowhere near as serious as Nancy's.
Ooh, man, I tell you what, man, you don't want to, I can't even don't want to do this with, yo.
Don't worry about Peggy. She does not have the same kind of medical condition that's causing Dale's wife to suffer unduly. Where is she?
I love the dramatic irony of Dale going three times a week.
I love that Dale is completely blank as all of them are talking around this thing so obviously.
And I think Boomtower is just saying it in front of him, but no one can understand him.
But that Dale's just like, yep. What are you guys talking about? But they're having to say that Peggy, they're also having to tell Hank, like, I'm sure you satisfy Peggy much more than Dale does with Nancy, and your marriage is much happier. Like,
so Peggy comes home, and you made an observation yesterday, Henry, when we were talking. Like, it's like
it's a very dark joke.
It's set up so Hank thinks that Peggy was possibly drugged and assaulted or something, or was something happened, because she says, like, I closed my eyes. The next thing I knew, I was feeling wonderful.
I woke up and was feeling wonderful from John freaking Redcorn, and then there's just a pause, and Hank goes, good. So then you don't need to go back to John freaking Redcorn.
Let's hear them fight about it.
I just had a headache session with John Redcorn. He lit some sweet grass, and then I drifted off. The next thing I knew, I felt fan-freaking-tastic.
Well, good. Your headache's gone. Then I guess you're all done with John freaking Redcorn.
Oh, no, this is just the beginning. I have already scheduled another treatment for next week.
Peggy, I don't know how some guy rubbing your neck helps your head. I mean, what's the connection?
Ooh, my reporter's instincts tell me someone's a little grumpy without his dinner. I just got my first musing. My husband calls me his better half because I better have dinner on the table when he gets home. I'm going to go write that up while it's still fresh.
That makes Hank look like a monster.
It makes him seem very abusive. But, I mean, a reason this show did not take on the life that The Simpsons did in my household is because I think for different reasons, both my parents felt the show was making fun of them. And that my dad in general felt it was lefty loonies making fun of middle America and making fun of it. So he hated it that way. And my mom is not like Peggy, that she was a suburban mom who loved Boggle. And so when they make fun of Peggy, I wonder if she took that a little bit personally here.
It's too close to home.
It does. It hits, well, maybe it's just hitting close to home for me. I'm just like, my mom loves Boggle. She's not like Peggy.
What's wrong with Boggle?
Boggle.
So thank you, you two poops. So a very great decision they make in this episode and with the characters is like Luann comes in with Bobby. Luann hears that Peggy was with John Redcorn. She freaks out. Bobby freaks out because dinner will be late. Bobby does not know, and I'm glad they didn't make him aware because that would be, I think, too dark
that'd be
for the
weird.
show. There is one joke in season 1 where it's implied Bobby knows about it. Joseph is like, "Oh, my dad's car is still in the driveway." He's like, "What about Mr. Gribble's car?" or something like that. It's a joke that implies, Bobby knows about it. But I think walking that back and making him an innocent is a much smarter idea. It makes him more likable too.
Yeah, and that he's just a child, a very innocent child, so he assumes a lot of things. I would think by the time he's 18, Bobby might figure it out, I would hope, but that also shows you just how thick Peggy is, that Luann, who falls into death cults so easily, she's 100% aware that John Redcorn is fucking
She just wanted to sell jams and jellies. It was fine. All right, so Hank goes to confront the very muscular John Redcorn.
Hank, would you like a beer?
This is not a social call, John Redcorn.
He takes
I
the
think
beer.
I know why you're here. Your wife came to me with a headache. A real headache. Her head actually hurt.
I know that, but as I recall, that's how it started with Nancy Gribble.
Hank, you are my friend. I promise you, I would never heal your wife in the way that I heal the wives of others.
You better not, because if you lay one unprofessional hand on Peggy, I'm gonna kick your ass. I will.
So that beat was basically John Redcorn flexing his giant, handsome muscles as the wind goes through his hair and the wind chimes play. It's very...
Yeah, Hank is used to threatening to kick ass because as a slightly paunchy former football player, he probably can kick the ass of most dudes in the suburbs. But
we've seen him kick some ass.
Oh, he kicks literally kicks the ass of a dude who'd been torturing Bobby as his employer at NASCAR.
Spins him around.
Yeah, but that John Redcorn is like a god, like he is a Greek god walking the earth, and so he's with apparently a huge Johnson too.
Yeah.
Like he's
packing.
He's packing, but So this also does imply, though, that Redcorn is not monogamous with Nancy as well. Like, he's healing lots of wives all around Texas.
But he's in love with Nancy.
Yeah, she had his child, so that has a lot to do with it. But I will say that, like, it is a very dark thing and a very realistic thing that with a group of people, there is, like, this is the lie that we live with, and that we cannot break this lie for the sake of this one person. I mean, it happens a lot. This is not a non-familiar thing or, like, a weird idea.
It is the sad undercurrent of this whole episode that just like they are constantly describing, well, this is how you live with a lie. It's just it's easier. It's like, should it?
But Peggy does get the musings column, and she tells Hank she's going to need like weekly sessions with John Redcorn, and Hank is rightly freaked out, even though John Redcorn's like, I'm just giving your wife a regular massage. It's fine.
Well, Hank has a good point of that it started as regular massages for Nancy as well.
You're right.
So even if Redcorn has given her like 5 regular massages now, who's to say it wouldn't grow into something else? But who's to say is that also many men aren't attracted to Peggy? Like, but that Hank can't see that. That's a great line later in the episode.
I do have that line later. But so after Hank's bad sports massage doesn't work on Peggy,
those were great. I want to say those were great. That felt so sexual that he's like, if he thinks John Redcorn, he's trying to be as good a lover as John Redcorn. And
the massage is a metaphor for sex.
Yes. Well, especially when she says, you're just pinching and pulling. And I was like, that sounds like that would be said in the bedroom. Like, you're not as good as John Redcorn. It sounds like he's describing, this would all be stuff you'd hear in the bedroom. And it is... Hank is definitely subconsciously working through his fear of sexual inadequacy to John Redcorn when he tries to massage her. He's like, I could do just as good a job massaging you as John Redcorn. just watch. And it's like, I'm sure Hank is an adequate lover. Sure.
Adequate. So eventually Hank has to break it to sweet, sweet, innocent Peggy.
Don't make me say it. You know what he does to his clients?
You think he's overcharging me? Well, for your information, I checked around. He is less expensive than both VIP and Oriental massage.
For God's sakes, Peggy, come on. It's taken him 13 years to cure Nancy's headache.
So you're saying What are you You're calling him a quack? You're saying his methods aren't effective?
No, I'm saying they're very effective. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. Nancy, John Redcorn, Joseph.
Peggy is looking between all 3 of them for the obvious connection. Yeah. I love the banging hammer. It's very symbolic.
Good God.
So Peggy finally finds out after 2 years of the show.
It's beautiful because Hank actually assumed Peggy knew because it's so obvious.
Yeah.
But you never talk about it. So if you never talk about it and you just assume, well, it's so obvious nobody knows, but we never talk about it.
Hank even says, how could you not know?
Yeah.
And then Peggy says, Nancy told me Dale has a Jamaican grandmother.
Oh, that's so good.
Which is another, like, all Browns are the same. Like,
and
you
then
can pull anyone. She couldn't even have said Native American grandmother.
You say anyone exotic. It's just like, yeah. And then also that when Peggy confronts her, like, I don't even think his grandmother is. Like, yeah Peggy, it was all a lie.
So I have her confrontation with Nancy, but what I love is, like, Peggy is so into her righteous indignation, she walks into the sliding door.
Yeah.
It's a very nice choice. And then when she comes back, she's like, okay, the door's open, I can walk through. I love she's so into being, like, on this moral crusade.
But it's also a great gag of her not seeing something right in front of her face.
Oh my God, that's great. I didn't think of it. Oh my God.
Just as she did earlier I did mention that earlier, when she goes into the bedroom and it's right there in front of you. He clearly just put his clothes on. It must have smelled like sex and candy in that room there. Like,
I believe in this clip she says, no one had to tell me.
You dirty bird.
What's wrong, Shug?
Joseph is not Jamaican, and neither is Dale, and I am beginning to suspect that his grandmother isn't either.
So you know. Who told you?
I wouldn't have to tell me. How stupid do you think I am? You've been cheating for 12 years. Nancy, how could you?
I have my reasons.
Yes, and I've seen those reasons packed into his Sergio Valente jeans.
Ooh.
I bet you don't even have headaches anymore.
No.
Goes back in the house.
And you, Dale Gribble is your friend. How could you be a look the other wayer?
Now, Peggy, you're sort of freaked out because it's still fresh for you. Live with it a while. You'll see you'll get used to it.
The only thing I ever want to get used to is a cold glass of lemonade. I am still a journalist, darn it.
Oh.
She calls herself a journalist now. It's great.
That my reporter's instincts are telling me, like, you write a musing column and it hasn't even been published yet.
It is like we're reaching true Peggy that she is like, she loves being on a high horse. She loves like something that is very like, self-involved, all these very self-involved things.
Peggy and Meatballs.
Yes, Peggy and Meatballs.
I found a favorite one of mine looking up Peggy quotes online, which was, in my opinion, the day after Thanksgiving is the busiest shopping day of the year.
I love that joke, yeah.
But I also love the exchange right before that where she says, does Dale know? And Hank says, no, he's as slow as you. Huh?
Oh, yeah.
He's like, in a trusting, naive way, trusting sort of way.
Hank has to catch himself. Like, Peggy's very slow. Like, if she doesn't understand this. And so what we get in this next scene, and it's all visual stuff, so I didn't capture it. You heard the Peggy Hill at the beginning, but it's a repeat of the first scene, but all of the character dynamics are changed. Now that Peggy knows, and John Redcorn knows that she knows, it's all different.
And it's a great dramatic framing that happens 3 times in the episode. The intro where she's innocent, the intro where she knows, and then the intro where she is going to confront them. The same morning paper routine. This is very well written by the writer of Shrek 1 and 2.
Yes, God bless him. Joe Stillman, right?
Yes,
excellent. So Hank is now starting to feel guilty, rightfully so. Like this new wrinkle in the Dale formula, Peggy trying to guilt people.
He buried it this entire time, and now Peggy's making him think about it, and he's kind of pissed off about that.
And I love this scene.
Does it bother anyone that we've known for years what's going on with Nancy and Dale doesn't?
Nancy's having an affair with John Redcorn? This is the first I've heard of it. I am shocked. I am shocked. That's what I mean. I am appalled.
Yeah, man, you don't want to be prying in them family secrets, Hank, man. You don't get in a little skeleton in the closet, man. It was like having an old Redenbacher, man. Turned out to be just a dang old actor, man.
Look, can't we just discuss it for 5 seconds?
I don't believe it. I've known Dale and Nancy for years, and they have a fair-book marriage.
Shut up, Bill.
Like that Boomhauer is crestfallen that the son of Orville Redenbacher on the commercials is not really his son.
Yeah.
Dang old actor, man.
Dang old actor. And Orville Redenbacher was freshly dead by the time of this episode.
Fairy book marriage is such a dumb,
great fairy book marriage.
Such a great, dumb, wrong way to say that.
Yeah. And I think Bill thinks he's being recorded, too.
He's like giving testimony or something.
I also love that he's at first offended that they're doing it in front of his house. He's like, it feels wrong, but I like it.
Yes.
usually they're in the back of his house.
And that's how boring. I love. There's a million jokes like that in King of the Hill that I just love. Like, we're doing a slight difference on our incredibly boring routine.
Yes.
Exciting.
If they stand in the wrong order, or when they bring that couch out there, and then they end up building like an awning and all this stuff around it.
They
like
love
tables.
They love ruts. They love their ruts that they've dug themselves into.
It's safe.
Yeah.
And I also love when Nancy tries to talk to Min about it, and Min is like laughing at her that she didn't. It took Min 2 hours to realize it, but I'm very trusting. And then I also like it's kind of a little thing about how higher class the Super Nuisance Phone family is over the hills, that she's like,
no, the Superphones,
Mr. Superphone.
He's Laotian.
That she says she's going to call, she's going to email Con, which, like, who emails anybody in 97? The Hills do not know what email is. Proudly,
emails her husband.
We see Peggy's computer in this episode. It is a K-Pro.
It's beautiful.
She gets an iMac like in the year 2000 or whatever, in the Y2K episode.
They have to be behind the thing.
That episode is wonderful. That's another great thing about the show is like every prop that they have is like a prop you'd see on a live action show. They get a real one fun thing to read about is Hank's trucks. Throughout the show, he's had, I think, 3 different trucks. They're all real models of truck. And when he gets a new one, they hang a lampshade on it. They're like, he had to buy a new truck.
That truck episode is one of my favorite. When it was a real, it actually makes me choke up a little bit, the father-son stuff in that episode, because especially they are seeing a movie about a father and
to
son.
the flowers of time.
And
when he cries.
And he starts to cry, and Peggy's like, oh, you're sad about your son? He's like, my truck. He's crying about his truck.
Yes, actually, this will sound totally Bob Mackey, but I wrote a paper in grad school about that episode through a feminist reading of King of the Hill.
Wow.
Yes.
That's cool.
God. Though that's another great quality of King of the Hill is that they were so plugged into wacky or even criminal stories from regular world America that they would make those plots. Like Bill stole a tank because a guy stole a tank. Or the even like weirdo one-off later season episodes like where Khan started running a car wash place and had a coat covered in nickels or quarters. Like they just took that from a real Asian man who ran a car wash who had that.
I was in Vegas recently and I saw a commercial that was exactly. I was like, oh my god, this is like 20 years later and it's the same thing. It's another guy like I got rich doing this, like, and he's wearing a suit and he's.
I want a picture with that guy covered in quarters. Like that. Well, he's a celebrity to me.
God. So up next, Dale once again has a gross misunderstanding of a situation.
What, Dale? How nice to see you.
I can't find Hank, Bill, or Boomhauer. If they're hiding behind the door, just nod slowly.
Oh, you sweet man. You know, I have been thinking a lot about you. We never get to talk, you and I. Why is that?
Silence.
Anyway, Nancy should count herself lucky to have a man like you. Just look at you, the way that hat accents your head. Plenty of women would be happy to have you. Good women. Would you like to come in for some pie?
Ooh.
I should go.
Hey, Dale, what's going on?
Oh, not much. Peggy Hill wants to leave Hank and run away with me.
I don't believe it. Well, they have a fairy book marriage.
Bill has rehearsed this line.
So I can't see it from Dale's side of things that if you never thought about Peggy once in your life and have never said more than 10 words to her in a row, probably, that then she says, compliments your looks, invites you in, saying that a lot of good women would be happy to be with you. Like, it's also that Peggy is being an idiot and doesn't know what that sounds like.
It's a very almost like a Three's Company kind of scene, but it's very smart in terms of just showing how naive Dale is.
Yes, yeah. But also that lets you have a story beat too that lets you know that Dale is not a bad guy because he's actually better to Hank than Hank is to him at least from the belief in the sanctity of marriage.
Yes, he's the first one to report to Hank about this.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
One of the voice actors we haven't discussed yet is Johnny Hardwick.
Yeah,
the voice of Dale Gribble,
and a writer for the show.
He was a writer for. He was found at was it the Comedy Store or the Laugh Factory,
like Austin or something.
He's from there, but they saw him in L.A. at the Laugh Factory. With Greg Daniels saw saw him, and they brought him on. He was going to be on an MTV show, and he went to King of the Hill and became like a integral part of what that show became. They saw him doing a stand-up set about his dad.
Oh,
and
it's Dale Gribble's voice?
Basically Dale Gribble's voice, yeah. And then they brought him on, and he's another one that he has a voice unlike anyone else, and he does this monotone thing that anytime his voice does something different, it's so important. So when his voice cracks there, it's like, oh my God, Dale cracked.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very monotone voice. It would eventually be, I mean, I think it's working its way up to the Dale that would be more familiar with us, but it's much faster and much higher tone than the, like, I'm Dale Gribble in the first episode.
Yeah.
Like,
and then later on, like, initiate squirrel tactic, like when he goes crazy.
And he's just shrieking.
Shh-shaw, that's it. But also Hardwick does, which I was so happy in our live show that we got to see them perform.
Oh, yeah.
He did it. His announcer guy, who is the Arlen announcers, is like, that he's just has so much more energy, and he's just like this kind of slightly fey, like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Like,
Sunday. That guy. Anytime you hear a commercial that's excited, it's usually him.
I think he liked doing that so much that he added some of that to Dale.
Oh,
just to have fun with Dale.
Yeah. But Dale, well, internally in the show, maybe you could say that once Dale started having regular relations with Nancy, he loosened up a bit and had a little more fun.
I would hope so. So up next, we find the harsh truth about Doyle Harkavy.
Don't worry, Aunt Peggy. I'm sure that even Doyle Harkavy had trouble sometimes.
Doyle Harkavy. If you ask me, Doyle Harkavy wasn't that good.
Thank you, Mom. It's about time somebody said it. Of course coffee wakes you up in the morning. I mean, that's how they advertise it.
Thank you, Bobby. That shows Bobby is like slightly more savvy about like I guess art or writing or comedy.
For sure. I think Bobby sometimes can be the soul of the writers who were the sensitive, artistic child of hard scrabble, salt of the earth folks. And so when he has moments like that, it is the writer saying like, musings are stupid. You're dumb. Why? Who would write this
They're
shit?
the easiest things to write.
Yeah.
He's like the kids on Freaks and Geeks, who are like little comedy nerds who would go on to, be actual, like I presume those
to own
kids.
Hollywood like Judd Apatow and Paul Feig did.
Or John Francis Daley, who just made Game Night, which is fucking fantastic.
I gotta watch that. Those trailers, I thought they were okay, but I was like, but your enjoyment of it is really turning me around.
One more thing about Dale. Originally offered to Daniel Stern.
I heard that, yeah.
Who they couldn't agree on a salary, and they offered it to Johnny Hardwick, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm already working for you."
I'm glad Johnny Hardwick got it. His Dale is great.
He's only not in one episode.
Wow.
I don't know what episode it is.
Ooh, maybe it's the one where they go to Bill's family's place. I don't know.
Maybe
it could be in
it's
the beginning of that one.
Maybe it's the one where he takes his mom to the where do they go? Where he takes his mom and her friends to look at those miniatures, and it turns out to be Spring Break.
Party Island. That's great.
And not a writer, but who did a voice, but Bill Dauterive is the name of a writer, executive producer on the show, who would actually do the Greg Daniels thing for Bob's Burgers. That Lauren Bouchard of Soup to Nuts fame and all the home movies and all that stuff, he was pitching this show Bob's Burgers to Fox, and then eventually let's partner you with Bill Dauterive. He is awesome and knew how to do a similar family sitcom, and I think Bill Dauterive made Bob's Burgers work as a network show. It can't. Adult Swim, Lucy, Daughter of the Devil stuff, which I love, doesn't work on Fox in the animation block with The Simpsons.
It needs to be about a family and has to have heart and add all that stuff in.
Though they constantly have to have Bob get accidentally high so they can just have John Benjamin be crazy.
Or do a Studio Ghibli
homage.
That's right.
He constantly I accidentally drank too much wine. I took too many hot painkillers. Now to scream and be crazy, John Benjamin.
And it's fun to look into who they're all designed to look like, because that's also another cup game of I think it's Dale looks like Mike Judge.
A bit, yeah. Mike Judge is balding, and
I believe
a skinny guy.
Bill looks like someone on the staff too. I forget, but there's Boomhauer. Boomhauer looks like Boomhauer looks like Johnny Hardwick.
I think so, and I think Mike Judge designed all the characters, the initial designs, and I believe Bobby was a sketch of a little fat kid he saw at a mall, just with ice cream all over him.
It's so specifically a little fat kid, but Bobby has tons of confidence. That's what's so great in Husky Bobby, that he's oh, I'm husky? I'm wonderful.
Yeah.
Like, I get to live my
These
life.
clothes finally fit me.
Finally, I was a medium.
He's very much like Martin Prince on The Simpsons, but the intent is much different with him. So
he doesn't get like bullied or beat up or anything because of his conflict. Like maybe a little bit, but it's mostly people are like, yeah, Bobby like knows what he's doing.
He jokes his way out of things, you know.
Yeah.
So up next, Hank is trying to like counsel Peggy, like, how do you forget about these things? Hank uses sports, and he recommends Peggy use Boggle, and that's exactly what she does in this scene.
Oh, man, look at that John Redcorn. He sure can swing. Whoa!
I should point out they're watching a baseball game where John Redcorn is playing.
Yes.
Good eye.
Are you kidding? This guy never strikes out. Ain't that right, Nancy?
3 times.
Boggle, think. Boggle.
All right, where you go, man? Woohoo! Redcorn's gonna score again.
Oh, scores, cores, soars. Oh.
All right, come on, John, come on. He's going all the way.
I have to get out of here.
Ballpark nachos. You don't buy them, you only rent them.
I'm done, Hank. My rose-colored glasses are off, and the world looks flesh-colored and unappealing. I cannot live the lie anymore.
Well, it takes two to talk about it, and everyone else already knows and isn't interested.
No, not everybody knows, Hank. I can think of one person who doesn't. The one person who really should.
And they cut to Dale Gribble cheering for John Redcorn.
Yeah,
really into how good John Redcorn is.
So if I make it into a couple King of the Hill continuity things here that is supported in this episode, one is that they're on the same team. He's on the same team as Boomhauer in this game, which, as will be revealed in the last episode, Boomhauer's job is that he works, I believe it's in Texas Rangers.
Yeah, he's a ranger.
He is, yeah.
You find that when he puts his wallet down and you
And
see...
his name is Jeff Boomhauer.
Yeah, I think so. Something like that.
And that also feels like it should be illegal, that it's like, well, no, a pro MLB, a Major League Baseball player should not be on our local team playing this game.
That should be illegal.
And that second, one of my favorite explanations of why Dale doesn't think anything's going on between Redcorn and Nancy is in the wonderful episode with Charles Nelson Riley playing his father, where he finds out his father is gay when he thinks his father is this Lothario who left his mother for all these other women. That then Dale finds out his dad is gay, completely fine with it, is so happy to love his dad, and Nancy says, I'm surprised you're so comfortable with your dad being gay. He's like, what do you mean? John Redcorn's gay and I've been his friend for 12 years.
That's right. That's right.
So just know that in this entire scene, in all these scenes, Dale is thinking, what a great gay man John Redcorn is.
Dale is slightly progressive despite all of his crazy beliefs and views.
That is, like you said, they had to take out the racism and put something else in there.
I think he's progressive because he hates the government so much. Like that's part of him rebelling.
People have to help each other because the government will kill you.
Yeah.
So up next, Dale confronts Hank, which makes Hank feel even guiltier.
Hank, there's something I just figured out and you need to know.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Probably none of my business anyway. Sander!
Dale struggles to unplug the sander.
Hank, it's important. Your wife loves me and wants us to run off together. I've not yet been able to ascertain where.
Dale.
No problemo on this end. I don't even find her attractive.
Of course you do, and I appreciate the lie, but Peggy's just being nice to you. But you're a good friend for wanting to tell me. Dale, if the shoe were on the other foot, would you want to know?
Don't flatter yourself, Hank. Nancy likes her men thin and pale of face. I thank God every day for sending me an angel with the hots for my track team physique.
I love that track team physique.
I love you couldn't describe something more the opposite of John Redcorn than pale face is what stereotypical Native Americans say in cartoons.
Thin and pale of face.
Yeah. What makes the red man red? I do want to clarify before we get comments. He's not a baseball Texas Ranger. He's a police Texas Ranger.
I didn't know what you were getting at.
I was like, oh, wait a second. Am I wrong?
I totally
totally
misremembered that. I thought he played for the actual baseball team, the Texas Rangers.
Yeah. And I was even like, how did they communicate that.
For some reason, I thought you were
forgot.
saying he was a Ranger and he also played professional baseball.
Yeah,
Like,
as in
I'm sorry, Hank.
No, as in George Bush's team, the Texas Rangers.
well, now it's been clarified. So
And it
we're-
is Jeff. I was also
It is
clarifying
Jeff.
that.
Apologies, folks. I'm usually the continuity nerd, and I failed you, listeners. I failed you all.
But why would a Texas Ranger play baseball? Like, that should be illegal too. He could shoot everyone in the field. He's allowed to. And I love just like so. This episode is just a great
Dale's a
character
good
study.
guy.
Yeah, it's like it shows that like Hank has to deal with the crushing guilt of like this lie falling apart and what it's actually doing to Dale. Like he has to live with like I have to lie to my friend's face and like oh my friend would come to me if the same thing was happening, but I would never go to Dale. So he feels like he's betraying Dale.
He didn't go to Dale immediately or ever, and it's
like none of my business.
It's Hank right in his face of like you're a worse friend than Dale. And especially when for Hank, I think, especially in other episodes. He definitely likes being superior to them. Like he is the quarterback, and they are his support.
That's right. If Dale's a towel boy.
Yeah, that's right. He's the towel boy, and Bill's a blocker, getting a ton of concussions.
Yeah,
and he'll like remove himself from that position because he sees it, and he'll let them screw up just to save them. Like in one of my favorite ones, the Firehouse episode, where he lets them light the station on fire before he saves them all, or when they fall off the boat.
It's
and
a Rashomon
like, I told you this
story.
would happen.
Yeah. That boat one. That's terrifying.
Yes.
We're all going to drown.
I get
There's
very
no way.
stressed out watching this.
It's like open water, but with King of the Hill. One of my favorites is a later one. It's the anger management one where Dale builds a tunnel to Hank's house, and they all want to like live in the tunnel and hang out in the tunnel. And then Hank makes sure they almost die before he rescues them because a garbage truck is about to destroy the tunnel that they built, crushing them inside.
He waits.
Yes.
But yeah, the Dale is the better guy here than Hank. But Hank, no matter how many people say almost the truth to Dale, it just never registers. He's like, no.
I think there's a lot of willful ignorance on Dale's part. There's a mental block there.
I had a fan theory that he knew all along, and I went in the last episode. I went in the last shot of the series. This is one of my like just fan fiction-y things where I wanted them to like tell him and him be like, yeah, so like, or just like him, just know all like I know all this. You've all been bugged for 20 years. I know what you're talking about.
That's the one thing they didn't let him figure out. I assumed it would happen by the end, but it never did.
A lot of characters got to evolve. He never got to know who his son was. That's another of my favorite gags later about when John Redcorn wants to connect with Joseph, and Nancy's like, he's Dale's son. He's like, you say that now, but see which box you check on his college application.
Yeah.
And also I also love seeing Peggy come up with an article lie that she's like, sleeping dogs don't lie.
Oh,
They
I have
lie.
all of
Like,
that.
oh, yeah. Okay.
I have all of that. This is great because as sort of like it wants to be a sort of middlebrow show appealing to all people. These are all Harvard-ass writery jokes. Like, what is the worst writing that you could ever write? And it is Peggy Hill's writing, and I love every bad sentence of it.
You hear the expression, lie like a dog, often enough that it is almost a cliche. But more often than not, if someone is lying to you, they're a person. We all know a certain person who is lying to her husband. Every time we look the other way, we add a lie to a lie. Well, this reporter is not going to lie anymore. And you can print that.
It's so bad. It's like she's trying to tiptoe around it, and then she's like, we all know someone who's cheating on their wife. Or cheating on their husband,
We
rather.
all know a wife who's cheating on their husband. It's like, you could be more vague. You could say spouse. You could say that, or person who's lying to another person. And then that she also says, you can print that. It's like, it was printed. You're reading it. This has been printed.
That was one of her many musings, including one about wanting to have waffles.
Well, yeah, my assumption about waffles is that it was, if you ask me, waffles are superior to pancakes in every way but shape. That's my very own musing there about waffles.
I like it. I buy it as a Peggy musing. So I love Nancy's appraisal of Dale. I love Dale in a lights on kind of way. That's very sad.
They need to make it clear though that Nancy doesn't hate Dale. She finds him physically repulsive, perhaps, but and in the episode where she breaks up with Redcorn, I love her shock after having sex with Dale. She's like, I had sex with my husband. Whoa!
Yeah, it's like she's cheating on John Redcorn.
I know, it's beautiful, but in the first episode, the characterization of Dale just like, oh, Nancy can't stand him, but she's not going to divorce her husband. You don't get a divorce in her mind, so she just keeps it going. But this is the softening of it too, of like Nancy saying like she doesn't hate Dale, she's not in a loveless marriage, but in a lights on kind of way. She just isn't physically into him at all.
Like, just like in the Dog Dale Afternoon episode, Dale goes crazy thinking someone has stolen his tractor. And Hank says, you don't put pressure on a structure that was unsound in the first place. Sorry, that wasn't up to code in the first place. And I think that is why it's like Dale will go crazy. Dale's already crazy. We don't want him to go like murder crazy.
Yeah, that's true.
So this is a very long clip. And by that I mean it's like a minute long, but it is the scene between Peggy and Dale. And I love that it's a very, very sweet portrayal of Dale. You're like, oh, Dale's a cool, good dad who loves Joseph. And this news could destroy his relationship with Joseph. So ultimately, like, Peggy needs to preserve this.
Are you going to hurt Joseph to do this?
Dale, Nancy is not the wife you think she is. And John Redcorn, well, he is not the friend that you think he is.
Wait a minute, let me get this straight. Nancy and John Redcorn did something to your dog?
No, damn it, Dale. Nancy and John Redcorn are...
Hey, Dad!
Just a sec, Peggy. Yes, son?
Me and Bobby are bored. What do we do?
How about renting a videotape?
Yeah, well, we want to see Encino Man, but we don't have any money.
Pauly Shore 1992 classic. Well, I got 2 5s. One for you, one for me.
Thanks, Dad.
Oh, wait. I found some more. Can't watch Encino Man without milk balls, huh?
Thanks, Dad!
Sorry about that, Peggy. Now, what is it that I don't know?
Dale, I just found out that Vikings were the first visitors to the moon.
Well, I knew that. Why do you think we named our spacecraft after them?
And I gotta say, the character of Dale Gribble is now like 50% InfoWars crazy level. Like InfoWars is now much crazier than Dale Gribble.
Yeah, I hate when satire gets outpaced by reality.
Yeah.
It's no fun.
We don't have a line of the show jingle for this series, but I love. So let me get this straight: Nancy and John Redcorn did something to your dog.
It's beautiful, and it is also that, like you said, this person would be racist in real life. I think they would also not be a good dad.
Yeah, that's true.
They would be too crazy and selfish to be a good dad. But he, at the very least, he's good at spoiling his son and loving him and being nice to him. And
through the series, he is like on board with Joseph and like his life and everything like that. He's never like trying to avoid Joseph or thinking Joseph is weird. And at a certain point, like he realizes like Joseph is stronger than me, and I fear him.
In Joseph's transformation episode, at the start of it, Dale is so full of pride. He's like, well, think of my boy, Hank. Like, what do you think? Like, he's just full of fatherly pride. But that Encino Man thing is just so cute to me.
It's a very Dale Gribble loves Encino Man because that's the kind of movie he would like.
It's probably the most touching Dale moment that exists. Like, they don't give him a lot of those. And usually they're with Nancy if you get anything like it, but it's or with Hank, like about their friendship that's gone on for so long. But that's a very good one.
And Hank wouldn't give Bobby an extra $5 to get milk balls. Like he'd just leave that to Peggy to deal with. And he also wouldn't think Encino Man is a good movie.
He'd make Bobby like clean the gutters for it or whatever, or do some sort of like yard work.
All right, so it was a really sweet scene. You get to see Joseph loves his dad too. He doesn't. He doesn't hate Dale.
Every character comes out like looking better after this scene, like especially Peggy, where she is like, I think she's more into being like the moral crusader than to right the wrong around her, but she realized like my own like crusade is not as important as this relationship that I could destroy, which is a very like, they don't come out and say that to the audience, but it's like that beat, like Peggy understands immediately, like I cannot do this.
Other cartoons would have left things said instead of unsaid, as the ending would tell us.
Let's hear that last scene.
Well, how'd he take it?
I couldn't tell him. I guess some things are best left unsaid.
Yep.
You know, Hank, I
know, and Peggy...
I got you.
All right, then.
Great. Pepperoni it is.
It's very sweet.
Ends on a sleeping dog.
It does?
Yeah.
Oh, man. How did I fucking miss that?
It ends, as they walk away, the last shot is Ladybird.
Yeah, that's right.
Asleep. They let the sleeping dog lie.
How did I miss that after like 40 viewings of this episode? I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm not fit to do this podcast, but I want to say that this is why the show is such a good written show, such a good written show, as I cannot speak.
Show good. I agree.
Show very good. But I want to say a lesser show, maybe even a bad Simpsons episode would be like, I'm going to talk with Hank, go over everything that happened, say, I can't tell Nancy because of these reasons, and I can't tell Dale because of these reasons, it would destroy this, blah, blah, blah. They're like, let's not talk about it. Like, everything is communicated implicitly through these two scenes without having to tell the audience, like, here's why Peggy isn't doing this.
Yeah.
It's very smart. They trust the audience.
They do. Not enough shows do, and you wouldn't think that the show about suburban middle America would have that much trust in the audience who understand stuff, which I guess in a way it too is the theme of Hank's common sense wisdom. It wins out, though. What wins out is like, no, let's all just stay in denial. It's okay. It's better. It would hurt a child otherwise.
Yeah, it's like that's what's at stake here. It's like Joseph, and that's more important than, I guess, the feelings of Dale at this point.
Joseph is quite stupid in the show, but I would like to think that when he gets like 18, 20, that Nancy, if it hasn't hit him by then, Nancy would just tell him like, look, Dale is your father, but this other guy is also your dad.
There's one episode in the quote unquote crazy years that Mike Judge came back to stop where Dale, everyone thinks Dale figured it out with John. Everyone thinks Dale had figured it out with John Redcorn and Nancy, but it turns out Dale thinks that Joseph is the child of aliens.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
It's really good. So, this has been What a Cartoon, folks. I don't know how long we've been going here, but I love King of the Hill, and it's been my dream to podcast about it, and maybe for our next miniseries after talking Futurama, we can do a season of King of the Hill. What do you guys think about King of the Hill after this exploration of a very, very character-driven episode? Not a wacky, fun times episode, but a very deep character study.
I love King of the Hill. It reminded me what I love so much about it. The relaxed nature of it. It's trust, like you said, trust in the audience. Smart writing that goes without huge acting. It doesn't depend on huge acting or great bombastic delivery to sell a joke. It is much more understated. It's all these harder choices that are made. And I think it was a perfect balance of like Greg Daniels and Mike Judge's, both of their skills in building a show with an amazing cast as well.
Yeah, it really shows like what you needed at that time to have an animated hit where all these other people were trying shows like, this isn't all at the same time, but like Mission Hill didn't last because it's too far in the other direction. They were like, okay, it's still a family, it's still a sitcom. We're going to go deeper and crazier with it than other shows ever have in this format. And I think it gave them that room to stretch. And then it became a hit for, 11 seasons? How many seasons?
13.
13 seasons. Jesus Christ.
97 to 2010.
God damn.
At the thing we saw too, Mike Judge had this great story about how they have what is clearly the series finale of Luann marrying Lucky, where every character returns and they all say goodbye, and then there's just another episode the next week, and I was like, that really felt like the end.
Yeah, I think there was like 2 seasons after that episode ended. Yeah. But I want to say that we usually talk about like where do you find this to watch. We should have brought that up earlier, but I will say it's not streaming anywhere, which is it sucks. Like this was all on Netflix up until like 5 years ago, and that was like I have all the King of the Hill, but I will say the DVDs are like $10 each for a season, and it's really good.
Fox is dumping them.
This is one of those shows that it should be somewhere, but it also is kind of keeping it fresh. Where like every once in a while, so like when they put Friends on Netflix a while ago, I was talking to all my old dork millennial friends who were like, we have jobs where we interact with kids. Like I worked at a music school, and my friend was like, he was like a lifeguard during the summer. We're all like, why is every kid like quoting Friends? They weren't even alive when it was on. And I think King of the Hill could be now a lot of people are watching ER that like weren't around for ER. It just hit Hulu
or Frasier
Frasier.
Like
talk. Kids love Frasier, so like I think King of the Hill is kind of that next show where like you see memes and stuff from it, but it's not as over memed as other shows.
That's a great point, Matthew. I want to say that I grew up as a King of the Hill lover from the first second, and eventually episodes like these made me think like, oh, it's not just a cartoon I watch, it's actually very smart, and it's doing things the Simpsons can't do. And I grew up loving it, but I just would hear, oh, it's so boring, it's about rednecks, who cares? But I think when it hit Adult Swim, people realized like, no, this show is fucking great. Like, I think it needed like to be shown to the audience a second time in a different context for them to really understand how good it is.
And crossing over with anime fans who watched Adult Swim to then see it, it's like that's how you ended up with some amazing internet creations in the late 2000s.
All of the Naruto, King of the Hill gang, like
beautiful.
Dress 'em ups.
That's weirdly ubiquitous. Like that's a big thing. Or like the Pokemon of the Hill or whatever that cartoon is called.
Yeah, or
I saw them as like the Ginyu Force.
Yeah, I've seen that one. Or it's a Sailor Moon.
I've seen the Sailor Moon one a lot. Yeah, it's great. It works. It's Yeah, I would love to return to King of the Hill at a later date.
And what do you feel about, not to drag this on too long, but how do you feel about the possible return of King of the Hill? Like, Mike Judge is, I don't know, Silicon Valley is still a thing.
Yeah.
Do you watch Silicon Valley?
It's winding down.
I know I should, because it's very much of this style of humor.
I haven't said this yet this episode, but I've said this before. I consider Mike Judge the greatest living American satirist.
Wow.
I haven't watched The Good Family, but when you put Beavis and Butthead, King of the Hill, Silicon Valley, Office Space, half of Idiocracy, like when you put all those things together, you're like, wow, this guy like sees America through this lens that other people don't see, and tells me so many things that I've thought but not known how to say.
It's super, super observational.
Yeah,
like,
and
he
Silicon
sees
Valley
things that we don't.
Like I already loved Silicon Valley, just from being a nerd and understanding that world. But like living in San Francisco, watching Silicon Valley, I was like, wow, like you guys nail it.
Yeah, a friend of ours, Heidi, who works in the tech industry, she said, I remember when she told me she can't watch it because it's like, it's too real. This is my life.
I feel like I'd have
to watch this.
I feel like I had the same problem because I worked at a bad startup. I worked at bad tech companies. It's just like, I'm too wounded, but maybe after a few years I can heal and watch.
Yeah, the biggest problem with that show is it does have a status quo issue. The end of every season, they're back to working in that living room, and you're like, man, how are you going to get back to this again next season? You keep not changing the status quo, but it's very, very funny. An incredible cast like Kumail and Thomas Middleditch and all those guys.
And they got rid of T.J. Miller, so
T.J. Miller's gone.
Yeah, but though also back to Bob's question though about King of the Hill coming back, I think it is possible. I believe that I said it after that. We went to that live show. All of them were together, including Greg Daniels was there too. So clearly they were all friends. How could they not have a big drinky dinner beforehand, which was clear in how they were acting?
Yes, especially Dave Herman.
Yes. And, hey, they were still hilarious, but they didn't.
Mad TV's Dave Herman.
They were enjoying each other's company so much. So I was like, how could they not say, why don't we make 6 more episodes? Let's just do it.
I think there was even a question like that, and they're like, we don't know. Like that we all like being around each other.
He brought back Beavis and Butthead.
That's true,
and it was fantastic.
Those are great, and he didn't lose like a step in doing the voices either.
No,
like
that season is the best Beavis and Butthead has ever been. I think because the shackles were off. Like he was allowed to make fun of whatever he wanted without Viacom telling him not to.
I don't like making fun of reality shows as much as videos because like it's such low hanging fruit. But I love the cartoons in that season.
I think it would be great for King of the Hill to come back, though they'd kind of have to do what Rocko's Modern Life, I believe, is having to do for their new return thing of just saying like, look, we have to upgrade all of the technology. The modern life that this is supposed to be now has moved forward so much that we're just going to have to shrug and be like, look, they've got iPhones now. They got these things. They've got Twitter.
By the end, he had a cell phone. They had a computer. Like
That's
did
true.
like age up the tech with the universe. And
it made more sense than The Simpsons, which is drawing on like it's basically a 50s sitcom with today's issues. So like when they have iPhones, you're like, I guess that makes sense, but it feels weird. Also, I haven't watched the show in 20 years, so when I do, it's like, oh,
when they
weird.
started The Simpsons, they intentionally had a TV with rabbit ears on it.
Yeah.
And so they were supposed to always have outdated technology, but if you don't give Lisa an iPhone, then you can't write an episode about iPhones.
I believe it's called a MyPhone, the very cleverly no, it's not.
I'd have gone back to the drawing board on that one.
And a MyPod. And
very, I don't know what okay, let's move on.
King of the Hill was great. Also, King of the Hill didn't overstay its welcome, which, I don't know, like, X-Files came back, wasn't so good. But I think Mike Judge already, like you said, proved it with Beavis and Butthead. If he wants to make it his focus to do another season of King of the Hill instead of like another movie or launch another show, I'm sure it'd be really great. I think Greg Daniels would have the time. I would hope he'd have the time for it too.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
And we've seen him play Hank Hill several times since then. Like he's clearly not left that behind.
In those really bad UFC promos that John Kirkfalusi put together.
Yeah, those are terrible.
Hank Hill is barefoot for some reason, and it's just bad.
Good
it's all
God.
bad. But let's move on. Okay, sorry to bring us all down on the...
I hate those.
Yeah, they're really bad. Please don't watch them. But thanks for listening to us. What a cartoon. We're so happy to have you as listeners. And I'm happy to be your host, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. My other podcast is Retronauts every Monday at retronauts.com, or look for Retronauts in your podcast machine. It's a classic gaming podcast. We've done so much stuff over the past 11 years. I say find a topic and download that episode, and you should like the show. And I will say that you can get all of these episodes a week ahead of time and ad-free if you go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, and the lovely Henry Gilbert will tell you all of the incredibly non-tedious things we'll give you for just $5 a month.
So, patreon.com/Talking Simpsons is what supports us. This is our new show that we spun out of Talking Simpsons. We couldn't just talk about The Simpsons in detail. We had to do this one. And if you enjoy this show and want to hear the next week's episode ad-free and early, a week early, then sign up for just $5 a month at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons, where you also get access to our newest exclusive series, Talking Futurama, where we're going through the entire first season of Futurama, one episode at a time in similar analytical fashion. And who knows, maybe the first season of King of the Hill will follow that. It's up to the voters, and you can only vote if you give us $5. So, get in on that is what I'm saying.
Matthew.
And I'm at Mr. Matt J on Twitter, and also at Disney 80s 90s, Disney 80s90s, where I tweet cool, weird, obscure things from the Disney company from the 80s and 90s, like the Splash Mountain rap video and stuff like that.
I gotta see this.
And I also, if you like hearing me talk about old cartoons, go to youtube.com/cartoons101. By the time you hear this, if it's not back up, it will be very soon with a brand new episode and a whole new relaunched Patreon, which I believe day one will include a whole new podcast. So look for that. Go to patreon.com/cartoons101 and check out. I'm in the middle of reworking everything and trying to figure out the best way to relaunch this right now. So I'm not going to tell you exactly what you get. Just go to the website.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next week with some Steven Universe. See you then.
Woo.
Peggy Hill.
You love podcasts, the stories, the laughs, the unexpected turns. But when this episode ends, the silence starts. Not anymore. Audiobooks.com turns that silence into your next great adventure. With over 450,000 titles, from bestsellers to hidden gems, your love for listening just found its new best friend. And because you already know the joy of audio, we're giving you 3 free audiobooks to start your journey. Imagine your favorite podcast, now with unlimited episodes. That's audiobooks.com. Keep the story going. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcastfree today. Because for podcast lovers like you, the end of an episode is just the beginning. That's audiobooks.com/podcastfree.